Hey guys, Luke here. Today I want to share with you the exact blueprint that we have used to generate upwards of $94,000 in approvals at Chase Bank. And if you're wondering, yes, we use these data points every day with our clients. So we are currently using these. So everything I'm going to share with you in this video is stuff that we actively do with our clients. So to start off, before we can apply for business credit, we need to set up a Chase Business checking account. Now, the reason for setting up this account is easily explained kind of like this. Banks, as oddly enough as it sounds, are a lot like people. We want to give money to people that we know and we trust who can pay us back. Same thing with banks. When we're setting up this checking account, we're starting to build a relationship with Chase. And when we put in money, it shows the bank that we are able to pay back, or that we have money on hand that we can use to pay them back. So when we are setting up the Chase business account, on the same day that you make the account, you want to drop about $5,000 to $10,000. Preferably more the merrier. If you could do more, that's even better, but at least $5,000, but I would recommend upwards of about $10,000. And you are going to let that money sit into the account for 7 to 14 days. But at minimum, you're going to let it sit in there for 7 days. Now, when you put, like I said, a large amount of money in there, it shows the bank that you have cash, that you have a lot of cash on hand. And when they are considering giving you debt, they're going to look in their system and be like, oh, the day he made the account, he dropped, 5 to 10 grand. He has money. He can pay us back. So it's very important that you do that. Now, when you are setting up the checking account, it's going to ask you to put in your business email. Now, for whatever reason this is, we have noticed that Chase and a lot of other banks, they like to see personal emails more than professional emails. So when you're putting your email, do something like, for example, luke321@gmail.com. They would rather see that than luke@xyzcompany.com. Don't know why. Quite strange in my opinion, but for some odd reason we have seen better approvals while using a personal email. Now, you've put the money in. You put 5 to 10K into the account. You've let it season for 7 to 10 days. The first card you're going to focus on is the Chase Inc. Business Cash, or the Chase Business Inc. Cash. Sorry. You're going to hit that card first, and then after that card, you want to go for the Chase Inc. Business Unlimited. Now, for whatever reason this is, I've noticed that there's better approvals when you hit the cash card before the unlimited. Now, when we're looking at data points, if your business is under 1 year, and when I say under 1 year, I'm kind of meaning 6 months. You want your company to be about 6 months old. You can do it younger, but you really start tiptoeing on the line of getting denied because of your company being so young. Once you've had about 6 months of time from incorporation, in about 6 months' time, your business can kind of be more established, and banks tend to want to work with companies that have age on it, which is natural because they want to know that you have money and that you're established. So I would say about 6 months old. We have seen the revenue of about 600 grand to usually be pretty good, in the 600 grand range. It can be minus or a little bit more, but we've seen in that general area that that's worked really good for that young of a company. Now, in terms of personal income, it's very heavily dependent on the individual. So like when we're building out funding plans, when it comes to personal income, we have to consider things like debt to income. Now, if you have a lot of money going out, you need to have a lot of money coming in, because banks are going to look at that when they're looking at your personal credit. They're going to see, okay, how much money are they paying out per month? And if we give them a lot of money, are they going to be able to pay us back as well? So it's very important to consider that aspect of when you are applying. But we have seen the range of about 350,000 work really good for companies under a year old. Now, when it comes to a company that's about 2 years old, we have seen a revenue of about 1.2 million work pretty good, and personal income being around 450 grand. Now, for companies that are like 2 plus or like 3 plus, we've seen revenue of about 1.6 to 2 million work really good, and a personal income of around 550 grand. Now, when it comes to monthly spend, it's very dependent on the business revenue, of course. So we have seen the range of anywhere from between 60 grand and 90 grand work really well. Now, in terms of a number of employees, banks tend to really like to see a company has employees because it shows that your business is thriving. If you're able to pay if you have employees, it shows that you're growing. And so we've seen the range of about 4 to 9 employees. Now, in terms of monthly spend and number of employees, the older the business and the higher the revenue, of course, higher the monthly spend and higher the number of employees. The lower the company in terms of revenue, the smaller amount of monthly expenses that you'd be putting on the credit card and the number of employees. And of course, when you're doing these, it needs to be realistic. If a company is doing 600 grand a year and you have, 6 employees, it doesn't really make sense, because once you take the personal income and you have your monthly spend in there and then you have 6 employees, the math just ain't mathing. So you need to really kind of focus, do your data points make sense? Because if it doesn't, then you're probably going to get flagged. And then when it gets flagged, it's probably going to go to an underwriter. When an underwriter's looking at that application, he's going to be like, okay, these numbers don't make sense. You're doing 600 grand a year. You're taking 350,000 in income, but then you have 6 employees. It just doesn't make sense. So you need to put logic into your numbers. So just keep that in mind. So sub 1 year, we've seen around 600 grand work good. 350 personal income, and number of employees, we want to keep it lower, so around the 4 mark. And for monthly expenditures, probably want to keep it down to around 60 grand. Now, once we get to 2 years old, we got 1.2 revenue, or around that area we've seen work really good, around 450 personal income, of course a little bit higher of a monthly expense, and around maybe 6 employees. Now for the 3 plus, 1.6 to 2 million, somewhere in that range has worked really well. The 550 personal income, probably about 9 employees, and then maybe for monthly expenses, around 80 grand, maybe 90, maybe a little bit less. We've just seen those numbers work really good for those amount of years in business and revenue. And so whenever you apply, so like I said, you want to apply for the cash card first. If you get an automatic approval, great, move on to the unlimited. However, if the card goes into pending, which a lot of the time it will go into a pending status, you want to call the Chase Business credit card application phone number, and you want to call them and just be like, hey, I just applied for the Chase Business Inc. cash card. It went into pending, and I wanted to see if there was any type of information I could provide for you to help speed up this process. Like I said, more times than not, it will usually go into pending from what I've seen. So if it does, just call that number, tell them it went into pending, and that is there any information you can provide to help speed up the process. And more than times they'll get on the call, they'll look at your application, and they'll usually just push you right through. However, if you do get a denial, you want to call the Chase Business Reconsideration line. And you can call them and just be like, hey, I'm very surprised I got denied. My credit is clean. I got a good score. And I'm just very interested, or I'm very, or you just want to be like, okay, I'm shocked that I got denied. Can you reconsider this application? And they will. They'll put it back into reconsideration. They'll look at it again. And a lot of times you will get reapproved. If you don't get approved, you do not want to move on to the second card because you're going to get denied as well. You want to figure out, why did you get denied? Now, when you are applying for these cards, if you know someone who already has these cards and has a good relationship with Chase, they can give you what is called a referral link. I would 100% go for a referral link if you have the ability to. If you do that, there's usually a higher probability that you'll get approved, and you'll get approved for a higher limit. Or the second option would be to go through Chase. You sign into your account and you apply for the cards in that order. But you never apply for the second card until you get approved for the first one. So if the first card goes into pending, you call in, try to speed up the verification process, and once you get the approval, bam, you move on to the next approval. And it's very important that when you apply for the second card, do it right after the first approval. You want to ride that approval wave. If you get denied, call the reconsideration line. And if they just will not reconsider you, or if they do and they deny you again, make sure you get the reasoning why you were denied. If you got denied, there's something going on that maybe you aren't seeing, and you want to fix that immediately before you apply for any other credit. That is very important to do. Make sure you get a reason for denial so that you can figure out what maybe happened, because maybe it's on your personal side or whatever else. But before you apply for these cards, and for this bank or any other bank, guys, please do your due diligence. Look at your credit. Make sure it is clean. I would not apply unless you have at least a 720 credit score. Of course, higher the better. But if you have late payments, if you already have a bad relationship with these banks, if you have like bankruptcies and stuff like that, or collections showing on your account, don't apply. You need to get these fixed first. And as well, funding is very strategic. You need to understand what banks you are hitting. So for example, Chase, generally most of the time they're going to pull Experian. But, and I have seen this personally, it can hit TransUnion, it can hit Experian and TransUnion, or it can hit Experian and Equifax. So when you are applying for these banks, you need to be strategic. What banks are going to hit what bureau? Some banks will do a soft pull. Other banks will just do a complete hard pull. So you need to be strategic on this. You don't want to go in there blind. And I'm telling you this because I don't want to see people going and applying who aren't ready to apply yet. Because at the end of the day, if you apply when you're not ready, you're going to hurt yourself. And you're going to really dock yourself a lot in funding if you just go in and start blasting stuff. So do your due diligence, make sure your credit is clean, have at least a 740 credit or 720 credit score, and then start applying. Now, I just want to recap everything. First off, business account, business checking account. When you're setting up the checking account, use a personal email. Put in $5,000 to $10,000. I would recommend upwards of $10,000 if you can. Or if your business is really old and you have really good credit, you can do a lower amount, like close right at the 5K. But generally, I would recommend upwards of 10. So put in 10K, at least 7 days in that account, and do not touch it. Let that money season in the account for 7 days, and 7 to 14 days. After that, you're going to hit the cash card first. And if you're under a year old, around 600,000 has been a good sweet spot for revenue. 350 for personal income, and you want to keep it lower on the number of employees, and you want to keep a lower number on monthly expensive. 2 years old business, we have seen the 1.2 million, the 450, maybe about 6 employees, and meet in the middle in terms of expenses, and then or monthly expense. And then for businesses 3 years or older, we've seen from the 1.6 to 2 million range work really well. 550 monthly or personal income, and maybe about 85 grand in monthly expenses. And then we want to keep maybe the employees around 9. So, but like I said, always make this very logical. Then after you do that first approval, hopefully it's through a referral link, but if not, you can do it directly through Chase Business. If it goes into pending, call in, and tell them it went into pending. You want to see if you can help speed up the process. Okay? If you get denied, call the reconsideration line. And if you get completely denied, make sure you get the letter, or it's called an adverse action letter, and it just tells you why you got denied, but make sure you get the denial reason. But, you get approved, you move on to the Ink Unlimited, you apply for that card, and same process. If you get into pending, you call in, speed up the verification process. And if you were to get denied, call the reconsideration line, and then you're good. So that's everything with Chase. Make sure you keep your information consistent. If you use a personal email, all the information that you made to get the checking account, use for the applications, and change nothing. Do not change the number of employees, revenue, income, contact information. Keep it all consistent. You want to double check everything. Triple check if you have to, but keep it consistent between everything. But guys, that's everything I have for you. Please do your due diligence. Make sure your account is good before you go applying for anything. But that is everything I have on Chase. I appreciate you coming and listening today. You have a take care and have a good one. Bye-bye.